I'm painting bright lemon dye all over my Nirvana logo, and now I'm very carefully going over all my pencil lines with a junting and very hot wax. It's quite fiddly, so I am having to concentrate quite hard to make no mistakes. Now I'm using a brush and hot wax to fill in the rest of the open areas. It's quicker than using a junting. Black dye is applied, logo is done. I'm waxing the areas I wish to keep white with a brush. I'm now putting on 3 shades of dye in a very easy way onto my cloth, and I'm waxing the areas I wish to keep these particular colours. I'm now putting on a bright pink, waxing the areas I wish to keep bright pink, putting on my final colour, which is a maroon, and batik is done. Drawn my fish, and now I'm applying 3 shades of blue onto my cloth for the sea colour. I wax the areas I wish to keep the sea, and now I put a light green onto my seaweed and a blue onto my fish. I now wax the areas I wish to keep this particular shade of blue, and I wax the areas I wish to keep green on the seaweed. My final colour black is now applied, and my batik is finished. I'm putting pink and orange dye onto my fabric in an easy way, and I'm drawing my flowers with a very soft pencil onto the cloth. I'm outlining my flowers with a junting and hot wax, and I'm protecting the centre of the flowers with a brush and hot wax because it's quicker using a brush. My final colour, mahogany, is now applied, batik done. I'm waxing my daisies with a junting and very hot wax, and I'm dropping gold dye into the centre of my daisies. I'm now putting lime green dye all over my cloth, and I'm waxing this colour as my grasses. There we go. Now for my final colour, which is a bright green, and batik is done. I'm waxing the areas I wish to keep white and adding light pink dye to my cloth. I'm waxing the pattern I wish to keep this shade and adding a darker pink. I'm now waxing the pattern that I've chosen on top of this colour and now adding a red. I'm waxing the pattern I wish to keep this red, there we go, nearly done, and adding my final colour, a maroon. Batik is finished. I'm waxing the shoes that I've drawn with a junting and hot wax in order to keep them white. I'm now applying bright gold dye to the cloth, and I'm waxing this as my background colour, again using a junting and this time a brush. Brown dye is applied, batik done. I'm waxing Ariana's hair with a junting and hot wax in order to keep it white, and now I put tan dye all over my fabric. I wax this to be Ariana's skin shade, and then I put a pink all over the cloth. This is going to be my background colour, so I protect it with wax too. Now my final colour, a darker red, and she's done. This is a face reveal of a famous actor, and I'm putting yellow dye on my cloth. I'm waxing around his features with a junting and hot wax. There we go. And I'm painting in the central part of his face with a brush and hot wax because it's quicker. Now I apply rust to the cloth and I outline his silhouette with a junting. I fill in the background with a brush, and now I put on my final colour, and it's Dylan O'Brien. Can you guess who this famous musician is? I'm putting bright pink dye all over the cloth, and I'm waxing around her features with a junting and very hot wax. I'm concentrating quite hard so I don't make any mistakes, and I'm filling in the bigger areas with a brush and hot wax, as it's often quicker. Burgundy dye is now applied, excess dye taken off, it's Miley Cyrus. I'm applying dyes to my fabric with a sponge in a really free and easy way. And as you can see, the colours merge together really beautifully. There we go. I'm now waxing with a big fat brush the areas I wish to keep these shades, adding my final colour, which is a black, and done. I've drawn a star onto my cloth and I'm putting yellow dye onto the fabric. I'm now waxing the areas I wish to keep yellow with a junting, hot wax and a brush. I'm now putting orange dye all over the cloth and I'm waxing the areas that I wish to keep this particular shade. I put red dye all over the fabric, wax the areas I wish to keep red, there we go, and now put on my final colour, a black. This is a face reveal of a very famous Irish pop star, and I'm waxing around his features with a junting and hot wax and filling in his face with a brush and hot wax. Gold dye is applied to the cloth, and I wax the details I wish to keep this particular shade, including the background. Orange is applied to the fabric. I wax the areas I wish to keep this particular orange. There we go. And now for my final colour, a black. It's Niall Horan. I'm painting dyes onto my fabric in a very free and easy way, and you can see how the colours merge together beautifully. I'm now waxing the areas with a big fat brush and hot wax that I wish to keep these particular shades. I now add my final colour, which is a black, take off excess dye, and batik is done. I'm putting wax onto my fabric with an Indonesian tool called a junting. I'm waxing the areas I wish to keep the colour underneath the wax in the pattern that I've chosen. You do have to concentrate because the wax runs quite fast out of the nib of the junting, but practice absolutely makes perfect. And as you can see, it's a very soothing, pleasurable thing to do as well. This is a face reveal of a famous musician. I'm putting light green dye on my cloth and I'm waxing around the features of this musician with a junting and very hot wax. I'm filling in her face with a brush and hot wax because it's quicker this way. There we go. And the background too. And now I'm putting on my dark green. Can you guess? It's Billie Eilish. I'm painting on pink, turquoise and darker blue dyes onto my cloth in a very free and easy way, and you can see how the dyes merge together absolutely beautifully. I'm now waxing with a big fat brush the pattern I wish to keep these particular shades and adding my final colour, which is a navy. Excess dye is now taken off, batik done. I've drawn Martin Luther King onto my cloth and now I'm putting grey dye all over the fabric. I'm waxing the areas I wish to keep this particular shade with a junting, hot wax and also with a brush. Most areas I'm actually waxing. Now I put on my black, take off excess dye and here he is. I'm spraying bright yellow dye over my little stencils and I'm waxing the white and yellow areas as my background colour. There we go. I'm now putting on a bright green onto my flowers. And I'm waxing the areas I wish to keep this particular shade. Now I put my final colour on, which is a dark green, and my flowers are complete. Spray light blue dye over my paper stencils and I wax the pattern I wish to keep these colours. I put a bright blue dye onto my fabric and I wax the pattern that I wish to keep this particular shade of blue. I now put my final colour on, which is a dark blue dye, and my batik is done. Spraying bright turquoise dye all over my stencils and fabric and drawing a pattern with a soft pencil. I'm now waxing the areas I wish to keep this particular shade with a junting and hot wax. Now lemon dye is applied all over the cloth and I wax the areas I wish to keep this colour. Now my final green is put onto the fabric and batik done. I've drawn my flowers with a soft pencil and now I'm waxing around the lines with a junting and very hot wax. I'm putting dyes onto the flowers, a yellow, orange, red, light green, turquoise, purple, brown and black. I protect these flowers with wax, put on my final colour, a dark brown, and I'm done. I'm protecting the white fabric round my heart with hot wax and a brush. I'm now painting on red and yellow dye in an easy way and now waxing on top. Black dye gets put on and heart is done. I'm putting dyes onto my fabric in a free and easy way and you can see how the colours merge together beautifully. I'm now waxing the areas I wish to keep these shades with a brush and very hot wax. There we go. Black dye is now applied over my cloth. Excess dye is taken off and my batik is done. Waxing the areas of Joshua's face I wish to keep white with a junting, hot wax and a brush. I'm also doing the background. Gold is applied to the cloth and I wax the areas I wish to keep this particular shade. I now put red dye all over the fabric, wax the areas I wish to keep red and then put my final colour on, which is a black. And here we go. There is Joshua Bassett. Bright lemon dye sprayed over my flower stencil, and I now wax this colour to keep it as my background shade. Orange and pink dyes are applied to the flower in a relaxed and easy way, and I wax these shades with a brush and hot wax in the pattern that I've chosen. Purple dye is now applied all over the fabric.